In this session, we are going to discuss about machine learning. So, first of all, what is machine learning? The use and development of computer systems that are able to learn and adapt without following explicit instructions by using algorithms, statistical models to analyze and draw inferences from patterns inside data. So, machine learning is also a part of artificial intelligence. Machine learning is a programming of computers to optimize a performance criterion using examples or past experiences. It also helps to find solutions to many problems in vision, speech recognition, and also in robotics. So these are some of the examples of machine learning application we can use in learning associations, classifications, and regression problems. So coming to different machine learning techniques, the first is supervised learning. Supervised learning is the type of machine learning in which machines are trained using well-labeled training data, and on the basis of that data, machine predict the output. The training data provided to the machine work as a supervisor that teaches the machines to predict the output correctly. So here, supervised learning process provides input data as well as a correct output data. So this figure explains the working of supervised learning technique. So suppose we have a data set of different types of shapes, which includes square, rectangle, triangle, and polygon. And our first step is that we need to train the model for each shape. So if the shape has four sides, we label it as a square. If the given shape has three sides, we label it as a triangle. And if the shape has six equal sides, we label it as hexagon. So after training with this labeled data, we train or we test that model using the test set. And the task of the model is to identify the correct shape. So the machine is already trained with all this type of shapes with the label data. And when it finds a new shape, it classifies the shape on the basis of the number of sides and predicts the final output. So these are the steps involved in machine supervised learning. So here the first step is to determine the type of training data set. The next step is to collect or gather the labeled training data. And then we split the training data set into training data set, test data set, and also validation data set. Determine the input features of the training data set, which should have enough knowledge so that the model can accurately predict the output. Then determine a suitable algorithm for the model, such as super support vector machine, convolutional neural networks, decision trees, etc. Then finally, we execute the algorithm on the training data set. Sometimes we need validation set as control parameters. Then final is to evaluate the accuracy of the model by providing the test set. So there are two types of supervised learning. The first one is regression and the next one is classification. So what is regression? Regression algorithms are used if there is a relationship between the input variable and the output variable. It is used for the prediction of continuous variables. We can use in for weather forecasting, market trends, etc. So some of the examples of regression algorithms are linear regression, regression trees, nonlinear regression, Bayesian linear regression, etc. So next one is classification. Classification algorithms are used when output variable is categorical, which means there are two classes such as yes or no, male or female, true or false, or any binary classes. So some of the examples are random forest, decision trees, logistic regression, support vector machines, etc. So finally coming to the advantages and disadvantages of supervised learning. The advantages of supervised learning is with the help of supervised learning, the model can predict output on the basis of prior experiences. And also we can have an exact idea about the classes of the object. It can also used in real world problems like fraud detection, spam filtering, etc. Disadvantages of supervised learning are supervised learning models are suitable for handling more complex tasks. Supervised learning cannot predict the correct output if the test data is different from the training data set which we provide. Training requires lots of computation time. In supervised learning, we need enough knowledge about the classes of the objects which we give. So the next learning technique is unsupervised machine learning technique. So unsupervised learning is a machine learning technique in which models are not supervised using training dataset. Instead, models itself find the hidden patterns and insights from the given data. It can be compared to learning which takes place inside the human brain while learning new things. So in supervised learning, there is no supervisor for guiding the learning technique. So here, the goal of supervised learning is to find the underlying structure of data set, group that data according to the similarities and represent that data set in a compressed format. So in this figure, it explains the working of unsupervised learning. Suppose we have a raw input with different images which are not labeled. That is, supervised learning algorithm is given an input data set containing images of different types of cats and dogs. The algorithm is never trained upon the given data set, which means it does not have any idea about the features of the data set. The task of the unsupervised learning algorithm is to identify the image features on their own. In this algorithm, will perform this task by clustering the image dataset in groups according to the similarities between the images. So finally, this uh, unsupervised learning is helpful for finding useful insights from the data. This also makes closer to the real artificial intelligence. So here the unlabeled input data is categorized and we get the corresponding outputs are also not given. Now this unlabeled input data is fed in the machine learning model in order to train it. It will interpret the raw data to find the hidden patterns from the data and then will apply suitable algorithms such as k-means, convolutional neural networks, and decision trees. The next type of the different types of unsupervised learning are clustering and association. So clustering is a method of grouping the objects into clusters such that objects with more similarities remains into a group and which are not similar or less similar are into another group. Cluster analysis finds the commonalities between data objects and categories. So the next classification is association. An association rule is an unsupervised learning method which is used for finding the relationship between variables in the large database. It determines the set of items that occur together in the dataset. Association rule makes marketing strategy more effective. So coming to the advantages and disadvantages of unsupervised learning. The advantages are the unsupervised learning technique is used for more complex tasks as compared to supervised learning. We don't have labeled input data set in this technique. So this technique is used for analyzing the features and patterns inside the given data. So unsupervised learning is preferable as it is easy to get unlabeled data in comparison to labeled data. And the disadvantages are unsupervised learning is intrinsically more difficult than supervised learning as it does not have corresponding output. The result of unsupervised learning algorithm might be less accurate at input as input data is not labeled. So algorithms do not know exact output in advance. So the next learning technique is reinforcement learning. So what is reinforcement learning? Here it is a feedback based machine learning technique in which an agent learns to behave inside an environment by performing the actions and seeing the results of the actions. So, for a good action, the agent gets a positive feedback, and for each bad action, the agent gets a negative feedback. So, from this process, the agent will be able to learn and predict a particular corresponding output. So in reinforcement learning, the agent learns automatically using feedbacks without any labeled data, unlike supervised learning. So it solves specific type of problems where decision making is sequential, such as gameplay, robotics, etc. The agent interacts with the environment and explores it by itself. The primary goal of an agent in reinforcement learning is to improve the performance. So, there are different components inside a reinforcement learning. The first one is the agent. It is an entity that can perceive or explore the environment and act upon it. The environment is the situation in which an agent is present or surrounded by. And actions are the moves taken by the agent within the environment. State is the situation returned by the environment after each action. Reward is the feedback returned by the agent from the environment to evaluate the action. Policy is the strategy applied by the agent for the next action based on the current state. And value is the expected long-term return with the discount factor and opposite to the short-term reward. The value function is the specifies the value of the state that is total amount of reward, and model of the environment is it mimics the behavior of the environment. Model based methods is a method for solving the reinforcement learning problems, and q value and action is quite similar to the value. Only difference between the two is that it takes an additional parameter as current action. So the several characteristics of reinforcement learning are: there is no supervisor inside this learning technique, only a real number or reward signal. Sequential decision making. Time plays a crucial role in reinforcement problems. Feedback is always delayed, not instantaneous. The agent's actions determine the subsequent data it receives. So there are two types of reinforcement learning, positive and negative. Positive is defined as an event that occurs because of specific behavior. It increases the strength and the frequency of the behavior and impacts positively on the action taken by. So it maximizes the performance and sustains change for a more extended period. And negative reinforcement learning is defined as the strengthening of behavior that occurs because of a negative condition, which should have stopped or avoided. It helps you to define the minimum standard of performance. So, thank you.